At the outset, I would first like to thank Policy Circle for organizing this and for inviting me. And as we are seeing, we are in unprecedented times with COVID-19. And the topic on resurrection of corporates is actually necessitated in these dire times that we are facing. What I have prepared is a small presentation. I hope it's visible to all of you.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is basically to talk about how insolvency laws actually have helped corporates resurrect themselves and reinvent themselves. And as we know, before 2016, there was a huge vacuum in this law and for corporate insolvency. And what it was marked with was a lot of bad debts and loans. And what 2016 brought about was a huge shift because it gave hope to the economy on recovery of loans. But the best part with bankruptcy law has been that though BIFER did not help with the cases and there was a lot of asset deterioration and stressed assets that was happening, what bankruptcy law focuses on is resolution of insolvency and not just on debt recovery. And not only that, the focus is on a very time-bound manner and adopting the British playbook of a creditor in control model. This actually leads to what actually has led to, I mean, with all of this, what has happened is that there is a lot of behavioral change in the ecosystem of the creditor. Now, earlier, if money was borrowed, there was this mindset that it is not necessarily to be returned. But that is not the case with forensic audit, with SFIO. I mean, the credibility of or the investor confidence has gone up. It has improved the credit availability in the market and has also led to more entrepreneurship. At the same time, balancing the interest of all the stakeholders. All of them have actually been taken care of under this law, which was not the case when BIFER or SICA were operational. In fact, at the time between 2002 to 2016, it was only distressed assets. Uptron India is one case which is not resolved till date. So, though this law has received a lot of flack for various reasons, which range from from haircuts to the adjudicating authorities being overburdened, which we will talk about in a while. It is a beautiful piece of legislation which needs to be protected, especially in this time. And I guess every law takes its own time to absorb into the ecosystem when it's new. What it actually did was a major relief for a lot of companies that were struggling in the last year, which was from March 2020 to March 2021, where the operative provisions of the law, they were suspended. And so there was no CIRP which was going to be initiated. And it increased the threshold from 1 lakh to 1 crore so that small companies could get some relief. So there was a complete suspension of its provisions, which helped a lot for the companies to operate and would not have to go into unnecessary liquidation. And what we also see, if we compare it with how it has been outside of India, is that the time which was taken for solving insolvency cases in various other countries was always much lesser than in India. India takes about 4.3 years in resolving cases. But the ease of doing business index actually shows a lot of hope for India because pre IBC, before this law was brought into picture, India ranked at 135 out of 190. And after this law has jumped to the 63rd position in the world, which actually is a huge boost to the economy and shows that we not only now focus on recovery of money that has been lent, but we focus on resolving issues. We focus on resolving the problems with the corporates because it takes a lot for a company to be set up and to be structured. And it involves a huge value chain, which includes its employees, its suppliers, its creditors, debtors. And to close down an association may be simpler, but this entire economic chain needs to be safeguarded. And it seems like one company goes into liquidation, for example, LMN. when LML went into liquidation, there were about 40, 50 ancillary entities which were exclusively manufacturing for LML, and they also went into liquidation. So it's not just one entity that goes down, but an entire setup that goes down with liquidation. So that I guess is something that needs to be focused on, and resolution needs to be emphasized going forward. And also, if we compare IBC with the laws outside of India, US focuses on a debtor in control model, which interestingly has now been introduced by IBC by way of pre-pack. So we'll go further into how we can actually bring about a change in IBC going forward in the future. There is requirement of policy change, and there has been a lot of talk about an overhaul to be brought about in this law. But I would suggest that, and in fact, this is something that is open to deliberation, is that instead of piecemeal changes in the law, there is need for a consolidated change to be brought about where all interests are taken care of. And something that Mr. Nath also mentioned earlier, that it's important to take into consideration the specific requirements of businesses, and they cannot be like a single solution or one-stop solution. It has to be customized to the requirements of various industries. So as far as policy change in future of IBC is concerned, we'll just take these points quickly, one after the other. Why is it that there is more liquidation in India compared to resolution? So since this law received a lot of flack on liquidation, we need to take into consideration the fact that when this law came about in 2016, the economy was already grappling with demonetization, and the market sentiment was not bullish. So the investor did not have confidence to put money in stressed assets. Whereas what focus needs to be brought about for resolution is that there should be enough assistance available to a potential buyer to be able to purchase stressed assets. So if there is an artificial intelligence platform or a digital platform where one can go and look at the assets, the wide array of assets that are available to purchase from, it will be beneficial for an investor and also for an insolvency professional, which seems to intrinsically struggle because of lack of such a platform and uses its own resources in order to bring together a buyer and a seller as an intermediary. Another reason why resolution is necessary and should actually be given a lot of emphasis is that instead of focusing on the liquidation value or the fair market value, there is need to focus on the economic value. So say the economic value of an asset or an enterprise is 5 crores and the liquidation value is 1 crore. Generally, what happens is that the company would be liquidated because it will not have a high liquidation value. Whereas if it can be saved, then it is best to save it, maybe even shift it to something like a bad bank for some time, so that it is possible for the company to come back and to resurrect itself instead of just going down and liquidating. The other thing that needs to be focused on is the first pillar of IBC, which is the insolvency professional, which is the intermediary between the resolution between the debtor and the creditor, and also to not only strengthen their education and their governance, but the fact that they actually struggle in finding the right kind of assets in bringing the two parties together, and also in resolving. Now there are IPEs, insolvency professional entities, but these entities, they focus, the focus needs to be broadened so that tailor-made solutions can be given. So if there is, say, an IPE which is good at solving solar power project cases or hydro cases, then it should be possible for the IPE to resolve those cases and not just go for those companies where its own directors are insolvency professionals. This will lead to better solutions and faster resolution process. Now, what we also experience with COVID-19 is that there are certain industries which need a longer protection time and a longer holdout, like the travel industry. or the hotel industry. Now, if there is consolidation of these industries and they are closed because they are not operative right now, like it was also mentioned by Mr. Singh, there will be a time when this will get over. This is not going to, we have to believe that this will get over and it's not going to continue forever. But during that period of time, a longer holdout is needed for these industries because consolidation will only lead to monopolization and will reduce competition that is possible in the market. So it's important for this kind of holdout to be brought about so that rebouncing of these industries is possible. And a major positive impact that we have seen from COVID-19 is how the future of IBC seems to change with digitization. Earlier, it was not possible that there was an online hearing that was taking place, and a lot of time would go without an online hearing opportunity. Now, when online cases are being heard, the time bound nature of the court, which is a maximum of 330 days, that can be protected, and that objective can be protected. So not only online hearing opportunity, but also focus should be given on better judges, on a lot of technical members to be on the panel, and also specialized benches. So IBC matters if they go to NCLT, and all other company law matters and Companies Act matters also go to NCLT. There is a lot of clogging of NCLT. So that declogging is possible if there are specialized benches which are specifically looking at insolvency cases. Another point which has actually been in the limelight and a lot in the news is the haircuts which the creditors have to suffer and take and banks have to take. And there has been a lot of recommendation by various committees by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on putting a maximum limit on haircuts. So it's also important to deliberate on whether this kind of model or this kind of haircut is viable or not. It is firstly necessary to understand that IBC is not responsible for haircuts. What happens is it's the market forces that should determine how much haircut should be taken by a potential creditor, and it should not be putting a limit, in fact, on haircuts will actually make the asset lose its asset maximization value and its economic value, because what happens is actually that the asset loses its enterprise value. So putting a maximum limit is not going to be favorable from that sense. Moreover, it also gives banks a reason to lend out riskier loans because there is a minimum amount which is safeguarded. So that is another thing that we can deliberate upon when a change is brought about in the law. There have been about 6 amendments in the law since the 5 years of IBC, and these piecemeal changes have only led to mistrust in an investor, in an executioner, and also puts a question mark on the policymaker. So I guess it is time to revamp it, but to revamp it in a manner where you come up with consolidated solutions. Even with prepacks, we see that prepacks is a very interesting model and an amazing model for MSMEs. As we've been talking about MSMEs, they are actually the backbone of the economy for a make in India, self-reliant India, and they have been suffering due to distressed assets and lack of liquidity. But this debtor in control model is actually a paradigm shift from the objective of IBC, which has a creditor in control model. At the same time, it also is important for focus on this, because MSMEs, like most of the businesses in India, are family owned large businesses. And these family owned businesses, whether small or large businesses, actually, there is a face value attached to the person who's running the business. And if the management is taken away in the hands of the interim resolution professional, and it is the COC which looks at the workings, then it is not possible to run that organization. And in that process, it takes up a lot of time. So a debtor in control model is a helpful model from that perspective. And it is also a reduced timeline model, which brings in both the judicial process and the out of court process, where a pre-packaged base resolution plan is decided upon, and thereafter the CIRP process starts. So the question that I have before everyone and for deliberation is that why should we just limit this to MSMEs? We have seen in the case of real estate as well that home buyers have not been able to find a solution. And even though they were made financial creditors, JP was one example where NBCC took over. But wouldn't it be better to have a separate class and to bring real estate out of IBC? Whether it is by way of an amendment in RERA or otherwise, but it is important to understand that a solution that is to be brought about for an investor or a home buyer is for him not to take a cut, but to be able to provide him with the home that he has invested in, because no home buyer is interested in a cut but wants their home back. So not only limit pre-packs to MSMEs, but also to real estate and to industries which are niche in character, and they require this kind of tailor-made solution, just like is the case with NBFCs, which are out of the purview of IBC. So going forward, what I would, for deliberation suggest is that the first version of IBC was when IBC was introduced in 2016. The second is when this pre-pack system has been introduced, which is like a huge policy change in the right direction for MSMEs. And the third would be to bring about a change in the law, which is not in bits and pieces, but is holistic, so that you're not, filling in one gap and then creating another loophole, but a holistic future of IBC is brought about with a consolidated law, which takes into consideration the niche sectors that are present before us, and consolidates all of that, keeping in mind the interests of all the stakeholders. So with this, I'll end this presentation.